Have you ever wanted to get win lines in your creative map, but when you try and learn how, you realize no one wants to help you? Because that's exactly what happened to me a few months ago. And I found out that it's because win lines are being heavily gatekept by map creators who want to have the only maps on the market with them. This is pretty odd behavior since I think it would only enhance the player experience and is not something that should be exclusively available to the highest bidder. That's why in this video, I'll go step by step to ensure you will understand how to implement this feature into your map. We're going to be starting in a blank world, but obviously this would be your map. We're going to start by heading over to the content drawer and creating a new folder. This folder, I'm just going to call Slowmo. Once we're inside the folder, go ahead and right click, go to Cinematics, and hit Level Sequence. You can name this whatever you want. I'm just going to name mine Slow Motion. What we're creating here is the slow motion that's going to play when you hit a target or when you get the final kill. Now go ahead and double click into your level sequence. And if you close the content drawer, you should see the sequencer. We're going to zoom in. Now head over to Add and add a time dilation track. Make sure you're on the second keyframe where it says 0.0083 and go ahead and add a keyframe. Now right here where it says 1.0, we're going to change that to 0.035. This is going to make the sequence start very slow and then gradually come back up to speed. Now you can zoom out a little bit and move your playhead over to 0.0667. Once you're here, you can add another keyframe, and we don't have to change this one because this is just going to be where we're going to start ending the slow-mo. Next, we're going to move it 2 up to 0.75 and just put it back to 1. Next, all that's left to do is to move the endpoint a little closer to your keyframes, and then you're done with the slow-mo. Now to actually see it in game, you're going to head over to the All folder and search for the cinematic sequence device. It should look like this. Go ahead and drag it out into your game. In the details, you're going to see where it says sequence. Just go ahead and select your slow motion sequence, and you can leave all the other settings default. Just to demonstrate what we've done, I'm going to go ahead and add an objective device. And if in your map you're using objective device as well, in the level sequence, go ahead and add an array element to the play function, and just select your objective and set on damaged. This is very important. In your objective, you're also going to want to set the health to be as much as it can go, which is 32,000. This is so that if you're creating a map like my map Trickshot Pro, you can hit on the same target over and over and it will never be destroyed, unless they hit the same target 320 times. Now I'm going to go ahead and launch a session just to demonstrate what we've created so far. Now that we're in game, you'll see that it does work with slow-mo. And then you come out of slow-mo right after. This is the correct effect we were looking for. And now we just have to add the win lines. Heading back into UEFN, we're going to want to open up the content drawer. You're going to want to go into that Slowmo folder that you created, right click, and add a Niagara system. It's going to ask you to select an emitter or a system as a base. Just go ahead and select the fountain, and then hit create. It's asking me for a name. I'm just going to put win lines, but you can name this whatever you want. Go ahead and double click into your Niagara system. As you can see, it looks like a fountain right now, but that's not what we want. So we're going to have to modify it to actually look like a win line. Starting with the ones we want to delete are drag, just click on it and hit delete, gravity force, and the ones we're going to want to add are spawn particles and grid location, and scale sprite size by speed. Once you've added those, you're ready to get it set up looking like a win line. We're going to go top to bottom, so we're going to start with emitter state. You leave life cycle mode as is. Then inactive response, go ahead and change this to continue. Loop behavior, set it to once. Keep it on fixed. And the duration, what I found works best is 3.9. Now for scalability, change it to self. And you can just leave these blank. Next up is spawn particles and grid. This is pretty important because it's going to be how many lines you have on the X count and the Y count. What I found works best is 5, 5, and 1. And then for spawn time, go ahead and change this to 0.015. But you can mess with this depending on what kind of look you're going for. Next is spawn rate, and you're going to want to set this to 0. You can already see it's looking a little bit different in the preview. So next up is initialize particle. And this is where most of the changing happens. For lifetime min and max, this is how long it's going to appear on screen. If you've noticed from chapter 1 win lines, some of them actually disappear before others, which is why I like to have the minimum different than the maximum. I know a lot of people like to have them as the same, but it's really just personal preference. What I like to do is 0.04 and max 0.05. That's all for initialized particle. Next, we're going to go to shape location. And we're going to actually change this from sphere to box plane. This is because your screen is rectangle, not a sphere. This is where I got really confused when creating the lines originally, because there was a lot of trial and error, you know, change one thing, push to changes, doesn't look right, change another thing, doesn't look right, and it was just a big loop. What I found worked best was 200, 278.5, and then you could leave this at 100, and then we're gonna do 0.5, 0.5, and then this last one we're gonna have a 0, because we want it to be up in your face and not like far away from you. Down here in offset mode, we're gonna set this to default and change this to axis angle, but everything else you can leave the same. Up next is add velocity, and we're gonna change the velocity mode from in cone to linear. Velocity, we're gonna go the red, negative 500, 0, and 50, leave that as the same. And then for rotation mode, we're going to change this to yaw pitch roll, and then just leave these as 0, 0, 0. Next up is grid location, and we're going to want to just leave this as the default. The next part is where these will actually start looking like wind lines and not dots. So particle state, you can leave this as is. Then scale color, I'm going to change this one to 2 just because I like it better. And then you can leave the rest different. This is actually where you would go ahead and add glow to the lines, or if you want them to be different colors, you do that in here. But I'm just going to leave mine with no glow, just simple for now. Next is solve forces by velocity, and we're going to hit speed limit, and we're going to change this to 500. Then scale sprite size by speed, and this is where you can have some fun changing the look of the line. What I found best is min to be 0.12 and then max to be 8.7. You can see they're starting to look a little bit more like lines instead of dots. And then max, I do 0.15 and 112. Now look at that, looking like lines. So you're going to want to hit sprite renderer, go to alignment, set this to velocity aligned. See, now they're in the right direction. And then facing mode, face camera. But now if you turn the camera, you can see they actually do look like wind lines. And so now you're done setting up your Niagara system. So go ahead and save that. But before we exit out, we're going to change the in and out point to match best with what we've set up. Move the playhead over to frame 6 and then drag the start point over to that frame. And then the end point doesn't matter as much. However, I'm just going to put it around the 50 frame mark. Now you're all done in here. You go ahead, save it, and then close. Now I'm going to show you 2 different ways you can apply the wind lines to the player. One uses no verse at all, and the second one does use verse, but it does look way better in my opinion. First way I'm going to show is the easy way with no verse. In the start, you're going to want to get the VFX power up and drag it out onto your map. Now in the details, go ahead and set time to respawn to 0, ambient audio off, and visual effect, custom effect, and set the custom effect to the Windline Niagara system you just created. You can leave everything else. In the user options, go ahead and add an array element on the pickup. In the video, I'm actually doing it wrong by setting it to spawn. So make sure you have it set on pickup and not spawn. The main problem with doing it this way is that it does not track to the camera. So if you hit a shot while looking straight down, they will look sideways. I have seen other maps do it this way in the past, most notably Hash Map. This is what a shot looks like that I hit on there a few months ago. Now when I shoot the objective, I get the lines. If I am mid-air, you see they just spawn on my player and not actually on my camera. You know, if you hit a shot from the right angle, you know, they could look okay. But I know you don't want just okay. So now we're going to move on to the next segment, which is the verse code to make it look perfect. We're going to start off by deleting that power up because we don't need it anymore. And are now going to go look for the VFX spawner. Go ahead and drag it out. It should look like disco balls, but over in the details, we're going to change the visual effect from the disco balls to our wind lines. And to do that, go ahead and tick the box next to custom visual effect override, and then go ahead and search for your wind lines. And now they are both attached. You can see it plays every time you move it. You can't really see them because they happen really fast, which is why we had to create that slow-mo in the very beginning. Now scroll down, go ahead and enable on reset, turn that off, just in case if you wanted to mess around with some settings, wouldn't get in the way. And then over on restart, add one, and pick the objective and on damaged. Now this is all you had to do inside of UEFN. All the rest of it is done in verse. And how you do that is you head over to the verse explorer tab, which as you can see it's not there. If it's not there, go ahead and hit verse, and then verse explorer should pop up, and right click, add new verse file to project. Name this whatever you want. I'm going to name mine Windline device. In this segment, I just want to give a quick shout out to Map Academy because I never would have figured out how to do the verse code without them. In fact, it's actually this video I'll put on screen right now that helped me figure out how to attach the swag lines. So a big shout out to them. Starting off, we're going to want to add a few lines under the wind lines device, and we're going to be creating an editable. And this is going to be a mutator zone. And to do that, you're going to want to type whatever you want to call it, colon, mutator, underscore zone underscore device, and that will be equal to a mutator zone device. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to create a mutator zone in our map that once the player exits the mutator zone, swag lines will be attached to them. So once you've done that, you could head down to on begin, you could delete this, you don't need it, and you're going to create mutator, because that's what we named it up here, dot agent exits event. Put that right there. If you ever forget what it's called, you can always hold control and then click on the device, and it will take you to the Fortnite digest, which tells you everything that you can use. And then we're going to add dot subscribe, and we're going to subscribe this to a function that we're about to create. I will call this attached to player, and you see we get a red line. That's because we don't have the identifier yet. So we're going to go down 2 lines, and we're going to create this attached to player, and this will be an agent because every player is an agent, and this will be equal to void, and this will spawn this will spawn a new function which I'll just call attached to player new, and that will be an agent. Now we have to create attached to player new, so we'll attach to player new. This is also an agent, and this suspends void. If this all seems a little confusing to you, don't worry, you can just copy what I wrote and it will work for you also. Thus we're going to create an if statement, if fc agent.getFort character, and we're going to need brackets. Then we will loop. This means the VFX device will always be attached to you. And then we will sleep 0 because we don't want there to be any delay. And I'm getting red line because I did not specify we're using characters. We'll add that at the top. And then here is where we'll get the location and rotation of your player's camera, which I did have to figure out myself because in the video they use the player location and rotation, but obviously for lines we need the camera, so I had to do a little bit of digging, but I did figure out how to get it done. What you're going to do is type camera position equal to fc.get view location, and you can add parentheses, and then camera rotation is equal to fc get view rotation. And with your parentheses, we're going to need to make the VFX teleport to the player. So here we're going to put if VFX dot teleport to, and brackets, camera position, comma, camera rotation. And then at the end we're going to need to add these. And you see we're getting a red line under VFX. That is because I forgot to add the editable for the VFX, which I will do right now. Because we're using a VFX spawner, we need to tell Verse that we need the VFX spawner to attach to the player. I don't know why I forgot that, but at the top, editable VFX, and it's the spawner that we used. And then that is equal to the VFX spawner device. And now we are all done. We can save this back to our project and go to Verse and then build Verse code. It should not build with any errors if you did it correctly, and it should appear right here as a Verse class. Go ahead and drag this out into your world. If you don't want it to be visible in game, then you tick that. And then the mutator zone we need to grab. And what I do in my map, and also what I helped Shawnee with in his, is you're going to want to put this around where the players spawn. So then when they exit it, the lines get attached instantly. And then we just need this to affect players. And then we don't need to add anything else. You can leave this to gameplay only, leave all this, and you don't need to mess with any of these settings. So just go into your verse device for the mutator, go ahead and click your mutator zone. And then for your VFX, go ahead and click your VFX spawner. Now go ahead and save all this and push the changes and it should work. Now that we are in game, we can go ahead and grab our hunting rifle, and when we shoot the target, we should see the lines appearing. There they are. As you can see, it's perfect with our camera. No matter if we go above, it will always be perfect with the camera. And if you're moving in the air, they work perfectly as wind lines should. If this is all you needed for your map, then I hope you did enjoy the video, have fun creating. But now we're going to move on to what to do if you want the lines to appear on a final kill. Back in UEFN, I'm going to delete the target since we're not using that anymore, and instead go ahead and grab a player counter and drop it into your game, and we're going to be using a zone. I wish you didn't have to use a zone for this, but for some reason when you don't, it is really delayed and doesn't work great. So we're gonna have to use a zone, and you're gonna change the zone shape to be as big as you need it, which I'm just going to make my entire island. Now here are the settings we're going to need to change to make sure only the last player gets them. Compare player count. We're going to do fewer than 2, or you can also do equal to 1. It really doesn't make a difference. You can leave all these other settings as the default settings because you don't need to change them. We're going to go into our cinematic sequence device, and for the play function, we're going to grab our player counter, and then it's going to be on count succeeds. So whenever this player counter hits 1, it will play the function, and we're going to need to do the same thing with our VFX spawner, restart when the player counter succeeds. That should be everything. Now let me go ahead and load my alternate account so I can show you how this works. Alright, we are now in the map with my alternate account. You can see the player counter is reading us as 2 people because we are inside the zone. Go ahead and shoot him one time. What? And now you can see when I hit him, I will get the slow motion and the wind lines. It works perfectly, and that is pretty much everything you should need to know about wind lines in UEFN. If you found this video useful in any way, I would appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribe if it really helped you. Of course, if you need any help with anything relating to Verse or UEFN, I'm always available in my Discord, which I will link below. Again, huge thanks to Map Academy for helping me with the Verse side of this stuff. I'll leave links to everyone who helped me, whether they knew it or not, in creating this in the description below. Highly recommend you check them out if you can. I appreciate you all for sticking to the end of this video, and I'll see you guys next time.